I'm here to talk to you today about cognitive development. The cognitive development theory is a child's way of learning through the environment around them. Put a child in some sand, they're most likely going to know to dig. Why? Because all they have to do is use their five senses to touch and eventually recognize that all they have to do is maneuver their hand to move the sand around, eventually giving them a shovel that replaces the hand and allows them to dig even deeper and further. That gives them a tool that they've learned that will dig. The theorist behind this is Piaget. Piaget wanted to know where we gain our knowledge from, which is called genetic epistemology. Piaget was also the first psychologist to create a study on cognitive development. He's known throughout the educational community as a popular theorist, and he's one that is reflected upon almost daily. Piaget came up with cognitive development, but the main focus is children as learners. Children as learners are not necessarily children who are going to learn exactly at the same time, but within stages. The stages of development, there are four of them: sensory motor stage, pre-operational stage, concrete operational stage, and formal operational stage. Each has an age group that we tend to look at as a model for where the child should be within that progression. In sensory motor stage, cognitive growth happens rapidly. Piaget says that newborns are genetically programmed with innate reflexes. They use their five senses. So this is something like you give a baby something to hold, it immediately goes into their mouth. That is them using their five senses of taste, touch, and taste to be able to recognize maybe that the object is round or that it's hard and that they can put inside of their mouth. The pre-operational stage, age 2 to 7, is thinking symbolically. An example would be a cup stands for something to drink. So they've learned that given a cup, there's typically liquid inside of it. That's something that they would eventually put up to their mouth and know that they're going to gain a beverage out of. Working towards logical thought through adaptation in the world around them. So from ages 2 to 7, children's minds are constantly thinking. They're constantly trying to figure out what's going on around them. What can I use? What's going to help me? How can I learn? The concrete operational stage, ages 7 to 11, Piaget believes to be the crucial part of development begins logically, organized and rational thinking. So organizing your thoughts, putting them in order. What comes first? What can I do next? And what should be the outcome? What is last? Using thought to solve situations versus physically solving them. So thinking to yourself in your head what the steps are versus physically writing down your steps or physically moving from step 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. If you're using them in your thoughts, you might be able to jump from step 1 to step 4. You're gaining the concepts such as reversibility, conservation, and classification. You're able to take a group of manipulatives and put them into groups based off of color, maybe shape, maybe numbers, maybe letters. Whatever you're able to separate and divide up is a product of classification. Formal operation stage, ages 11 to adolescence or adulthood. Educational inferencing without having to draw images. So again, that kind of goes into like our multiplication tables. We know that 2 times 2 is 4. We know that 10 times 10 is 100. So these are things that you automatically have learned and now you have memorized, and you don't need to use a pen and paper to draw stick figures anymore or to create bunches so that you can count. You're able to have abstract thoughts through manipulations and logical problems solved from beginning to end. Similar to math problems or word problems, everyday situations. I lost my phone. Well, if you lost your phone, what's your next step? You're going to think back and retrace your steps of where you may have put it last. From there, you're going to go and check and see if you can find it. You're going to look for it. And if you find it, voila, you just jump to that last step. If you don't find it, you're going to start over and you're going to say, where did I put it? If it's not here, maybe here. So those are things that you're able to solve from beginning to end on your own in the formal operational stage. Key words that we've looked at are schemas, which is the building blocks that allow humans to see the world around us. So it's kind of like those foundational skills, a way of organizing your knowledge, a set of linked mental representations of the world, which we use both to understand and to respond to situations. As a child gets older, their schema or way of organizing information becomes more complex. Discovery learning. Children learn best through exploration. This focuses on the importance of readiness, focuses on the process, not the outcome. So we want to know, how did they get there? How did they learn that? How did they get the answer? We want to know the whole process, not just the final product or the outcome. Assimilation and accommodation. Assimilation uses existing schema to face a new situation or idea. Assimilation is something like a cat. Okay, you bring a cat home or a stuffed animal and it's soft and it might purr and make noise. Okay, you turn around and you go to the zoo and now they see a tiger and they automatically think that's a cat. You're right, it is a kind of cat, but it's not the same cat that you saw before. Versus you see a giraffe, that's soft, it has 4 legs, but it's not necessarily in the same classification. So you're able to see that both of those are different. Accommodation is when the existing knowledge is non-functioning and we change it to deal with the situation or idea. So we accommodate very often. It's a way of adapting your way of thinking to fit the new experience that you're trying to figure out. So sometimes we need to change. As educators, we adapt to and accommodate the work all the time. We have learners at different levels, so sometimes we allow kids who have a hard time writing, we allow them to use the computer, but they're still doing the assignment. That's an accommodation. Equilibration is what causes one's development to continue moving forward. So it's a way of thinking that gets us to new experiences. We want to keep progressing and moving forward as we go. So this is an overview of the cognitive development theory. Now we're going to move over and look at the zone of proximal development. The zone of proximal development, or ZPD, is the distance between the actual development levels as determined by independent problem solving and the level of potential development as determined through problem solving under adult guidance, or in collaboration with more capable peers. We often think of that as the egg shape. The egg shape is the learner alone who learns by themselves, and as we've discussed, we don't learn many things specifically on our own. We learn with the world around us. So not only are we learning alone in our little egg, now we move out into the world around us. We have assistants, we have teachers, we have computers, we have books, we have all these different things that help us to notice and see what our capabilities are, but then you take that away and we kind of regress a little bit and we go back into a different zone of without assistance. So we've learned a little bit, but we've also regressed as well. So the theorist behind this, we have Vygotsky, and he's the one who discussed the egg shape, which is learner is alone, yet has opportunities to receive assistance from a teacher or peers around them, something that I just touched on. Wood and Middleton, they touched base on scaffolding, the way in which our instructional techniques support student progress. So this is also kind of known as cooperative learning and guided learning. Then we had Freund, the dollhouse study, which was research with Piaget versus the zone of proximal development. This was a set of children given the task to place furniture into a dollhouse with puppets. The set of children used Piaget's discovery method, while others used ZPD, their mother's support. Those with support from their mothers were more successful. Therefore, people think that ZPD is more beneficial than what Piaget thought of learning by the world around you. The ZPD, their main things are kids learn from teachers, yet learn more from their peers around them. So they learn with assistance, but they also learn more with the environment around them because their peers are at all different levels. So being pushed a little bit harder by those that have a little more knowledge is very supportive and helpful in the educational environment. If you give support mid-task, that will only boost a child's ability to complete the task at hand. So say your child is having a hard time with a sentence structure. So you go over it and you give them a little bit of help so that they feel that, okay, I got this now, and they feel more confident to continue forward. The line of natural regression, when the support is removed, the learner still understands the information given. This is in our egg shape. So when we take those supports away and kids start to regress, the line of natural regression is what that phase is called. So you're taking away the assistance, and so that causes the child to backtrack just a little bit, yet they're still more confident than they had prior to the assistance. Our cultural tools. This is something that Vygotsky gave and labeled as all the things to help learners learn, such as the television, books, internet, teachers, tutors, encyclopedias, calculators. I mean, the list goes on. We have so many things that allow us to learn these days that it's kind of impossible to say, I can't, because there's so many different ways with YouTube and all the different tools that we have access to. Knowledge through social interaction. So a teacher's role or other students in the classroom. A teacher's role in itself, we have two ways, is reciprocal teaching, helping to improve the learning through text. The teacher-student work together to cover 4 important skills such as summarizing, questioning, clarifying, and predicting. So this we often see in reading. We ask for kids to look at the title and maybe or a picture and predict what they're going to be reading about. We read it, then we turn around and we ask them to summarize it. What just happened in the story in your own words? We might give questions for clarifying purposes. In the collaborative learning, we have an in-group setting. Students of different levels work together to support one another within their zone of proximal development. So collaborative learning is something that we use often now with Common Core, and that is where you put kids into a group where they're able to collaborate and kind of problem solve together. So they're able to feed off of the different ideas and the different levels of where children are at. This pushes those who are a little bit further behind. It pushes them to think a little bit more, and it pushes those who are a little above and beyond to take a step back and help those who might be in need. We have our scaffolding, which we touched base on a little bit already, which these are different techniques that support students' progress. Effective scaffolding would be something such as assessing different tools like, let me move this over so we can all see. Breaking the task into chunks, gaining the learner's interest, keeping the task simple, control the learner's frustration level, demonstrate the task, and emphasizing the important pieces. Okay, breaking the task into chunks is making things smaller so it seems a little less confusing and overwhelming. If you're giving a 6-step assignment, maybe you just give the first 2 steps and then you do a check-in before you give step 3, 4, and 5. Gaining the learner's interest. Obviously, we all want to be interested in something. Otherwise, we are not going to be very successful. Holding our interest is something that is going to help all of us be more involved and intrigued and make us want to continue learning. Keeping the task simple kind of goes along with the chunks. Okay, making sure that we are looking at maybe we're just giving visuals instead of a lot of words, or maybe your goal is for them to write a paragraph. So pick a simple topic that you know you're going to get that paragraph out of. Control of the learner's frustration level. If you know that something is going to frustrate a child, maybe taking that and looking at your other tools of how can I chunk this or how can I make it more simple, and knowing if a child doesn't like writing. So if they don't like writing, you should know that ahead of time. How are you going to help them not become frustrated when it comes to writing? So what do you